Welcome to BTN.com, the fifth quarter here of BTN Live. Dave Revson, Glenn Mason, Jared DiNardo, Howard Griffith. You have a question? Oh, you're just holding up the fifth quarter. Yeah, we need to be intense in the fifth quarter. Usually this is when the band is playing.
The band?
Yeah.
Fifth quarter, fifth
Were you ever in the band?
It's an interesting thing.
I can't tune the radio in, let alone play this one.
Our first question in the fifth quarter. I'm confusing myself. What? Do you want to start this whole thing over? It's the fifth quarter here on BTN.com, and we're going to take some of your questions that you asked. Our first question comes from an Ohio State fan who wants to know, will Braxton Miller make a difference after he was named the starter for this week's game? That's obviously the biggest story of the day. What do you think?
You know, I think he will. You know, when we watched that film of the Miami game, Jerry, he brings a little spark to him. I mean, he's got big play potential anytime the ball is snapped, whether he's throwing it or he's running it.
I think significant difference. I mean, I think he's a guy who can change a game and who can win a game. Might be impromptu. I was really impressed after watching the video of Miami, Ohio State.
I think he can make plays, but anytime you have a young quarterback in there, there's a question whether or not he can take care of the football. And he showed some abilities to put the ball on the ground. If he can clean that up, I think he can have a huge impact.
You know, that to me is the huge downside here. I mean, what's the risk reward as a head coach when you have a guy who's turned the ball over? I mean, he's fumbled. He had all kinds of trouble handling the football against Miami. He threw an interception. I mean, he really threw two significant passes in the game, and one of them was intercepted. And then the rest was garbage time.
The ball was tipped up in the air, and then he's got to protect the ball when he was scrambling. When he was scrambling,
Well, there was a handoff.
Yeah, that's that speed sweep. I mean, I would just say all three of those were routine plays. I think you got to cut him some slack. I think you got to give him a break. It wasn't reckless fumbles.
I'd agree there, but when to that point, so he can do so many things when he has the football in his hands. I mean, there are a couple of clips of him where two Miami defenders are converging, and he makes both of these guys miss, and he turns on the Jets up the sideline. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's been inserted as the starter, but because they believe that they can clean up the fumbles and the interceptions.
And the other thing, he had great body language against Miami. I mean, he was running downfield. He was hitting guys and trying to block one play. It was a
Why is it
terrible
okay
block.
for you to touch Mason? But
Because
he can't touch you?
I was making believe like, you know, he was my teammate.
All right.
And
He is your teammate. We are a team.
I find it interesting there's a double standard. That's the only thing that bothers me. This one comes from Bleed Crimson 78. Do you think Penn State's performance against Temple was a case of a letdown week, or are they just struggling that much this year? What do you think, Howard?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, actually. I think they may have been looking past Temple. Temple is a very good football team, as they found out, and they just have to play well, and that's what they're not doing. And it's particularly on the offensive side of the football, they're struggling so with sometimes running the football, sometimes protecting the quarterback. And I know we talk about the quarterback play. I think it's a huge part of it because we talk about the team that's going to win the Big Ten. It's going to be there in December. Is going to be there because they're going to have outstanding quarterback play. No matter what the offense is, it's going to be because of the play. So when you don't get good quarterback play, it really affects your team.
You know, I talked to Steve Addazio after the game. He said their defense really was outstanding. And Steve Addazio is the head coach of Temple, especially up front. I mean, so their defense is pretty good, but I think they're in serious trouble, and I know you do, Mace, offensively. So I don't think it was as much of a letdown as they're struggling.
Yeah, I don't think it was a letdown at all. From day one, they've had problems offensively. And their defense, I've been high on their defense. I don't think it's a great defense by Penn State, but awfully good. And they'll be better if the offense gets better. You know, it's offense, defense, but they feed off each other. And when that offense keeps struggling, the defense has to go back on the field, they can't be as good as potentially they could be.
And I think it's a morale killer. I mean, you coach a team that can't get back to the line of scrimmage or 3 downs and punt, and you're a pretty good defense, that gets a unit down.
And I think that's why, you know, obviously hindsight's always 20/20, but we talk about having one quarterback, one voice, so you can start to develop whatever that offensive philosophy is going to be around that quarterback, whoever it's going to be. I think that helps build the chemistry and build the morale, build up the morale that's on the team.
And to your guys' point, too, and you made the point, Howard, it's a good Temple team. This is about what we expected. I mean, I think we expected it to be a game that's decided by less than a touchdown. Maybe you would have liked to see more offensive production from Penn State, but Temple's pretty good. They're certainly going to beat a lot of people in the MAC, that's for sure. How about Iowa's defense? We're talking about Penn State's defense being good. Mike wants to know, what does the Hawkeye defense need to do to stop the run? Has not been their forte so far this season. Defense in general has been a bit of an issue here, Mace.
Well, yeah, they're giving up about 157 yards rushing a game, which is very atypical for a Norm Parker coach defense. I don't think you're going to see much change. They're going to do what they're going to do. You remember when Kirk Ferentz first came into the league, he used to take the ball on offense all the time because the defense was that bad, but they did the same thing then. They're committed to what they're doing. I think one of the big problems right now on their defense, they can't get off the field on third down. They're about 50% of the time. They got to get on the. Once they start doing that, they'll start playing better defense.
They've always been a simple executing defense. What are they going to do different? I think they may practice 5 minutes longer. They may reorganize practice and do more individual drills, which help young team and new players. But we're not going to see a whole bunch of new schemes.
No, not a new schemes, but I think we'll see the players get better at their techniques. And I think ultimately that's been the issue. You've had players that have been out of position and may not have been playing their techniques to the way they're supposed to play them correctly. So when they clean that up, which is why I think it's important that they have this offense they're able to be in every game, they'll get better, but they just need to keep getting reps at it.
And the schedule works nicely because you have Louisiana Monroe and then you have a bye week. So they have a couple weeks here to try to get things together. And we've talked about this. They just lost a ton of playmakers off that defense. And sometimes in the cyclicality of all this, you just find yourself in a position where you're very young, which they have found themselves in. This one comes from Tyler. He wants to know, does Nebraska honestly look like a top 10 team going into week 4? They're ranked 9th. What do you think, Jerry?
I think they're borderline. They're certainly top 10 talent. I said this earlier today. They haven't gotten off to a fast start. I thought they were going to be further along. Again, they're undefeated, and maybe it's unfair. You look at Nebraska as a championship program, so I think that's how you judge them. But I thought they'd be further along on both sides of the football.
Well, it's interesting when we talked about this team, particularly preseason, and there was so much hype about what is this offense, what is going to be the philosophy, can Taylor Martinez throw the ball down the field, can he go vertically, can he threaten you with his arm? But I think when you look at the way this team is built, when this team is playing well, it's a run-first team. They want to run the football and control the line of scrimmage, and they're really aggressive up front. I think they obviously have a young offensive line, but as they get better, I think so will this offense. They're going to continue to make big plays in the running game because that's the type of personnel that they have on their roster.
Well, typically when you're a top 10 football team, you're really good. I mean, you look at the film, you see a complete football team. They're 3-0. I don't know how good Chattanooga is. I don't know how good Fresno is or Washington, but they're 3-0. But as we talk, when you look at this completeness, how their defense is playing, do they have a complete offense? It leaves a lot to be desired there, I think. So I'm kind of surprised. I'm not sure they're a top 10 team.
And you get some of that from Bo. I mean, not that he's negative running anybody down, but you can tell halftime after the games that he just thinks they can play better.
Yeah.
And I think it's not to say, as you're saying, it's not to say they don't have top 10 talent. They couldn't be one of the top 10 teams. But if you look at the gaps, only a couple spots between Wisconsin and Nebraska. I mean, it seems like Wisconsin's significantly better right now, right? But I mean, who knows? This is going to evolve. We'll see what happens when those two go head-to-head. That's
Can't wait for that one now.
That is going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot to look forward to here in these next couple weeks. We have one more. This one says, hey, Jerry DiNardo, why is Glenn Mason continually peeking at your notes?
That's really more of a question for Glenn Mason.
Well, I enjoy counting up the number of times he misspells words. I mean, I can't figure out what he's doing half the time.
Mace, I can tell you, anybody can spell a word one way. When you're really smart, you can spell it all different kinds of ways. And so,
well, you do that. I can tell you that. Sometimes in the same sentence. So that's
maybe I should move my notes over here from as we go forward.
That happens in my house too. A lot of creative spelling. It comes from first graders, but no, that's fine. That's the way you want to live your life. We're going to do this every week, the fifth quarter here on BTN.com. I know you hadn't been briefed yet. No one told you. Every single week, it goes on and on and on. We will see you next Thursday on BTN Live.